Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Adams Teaches Romeo and Juliet. In this video, we will be focusing on Act 2, Scene 4, which is where the nurse goes to meet Romeo and his rather rude buddies to discuss the plans of how Romeo and Juliet are going to get married. It's a cracking one. So let's get started.
Plot summary for you just to start us off. So the scene begins in a street in Verona and we have Mercutio and Benvolio having a little bit of a chinwag. They're one talking about the fact that Romeo isn't about, he hasn't gone home at night. They're assuming that it's to do with Rosaline because they still don't know anything about Juliet. But we also learn a very crucial piece of information. That is that Tybalt has written a letter to the Montagues, to Romeo, challenging him to a duel because he is still so angry about Romeo's slight on his family by going to the party. So he has challenged him to a duel, which has led Mercutio to have a sort of a bit of a joke about Tybalt's fencing skills and the way that he speaks. So it's a scene of comedy. Then our lovely nurse arrives to basically get that message from Romeo to find out what his intentions, what his plans are, i.e., are you going to actually marry Juliet, or is this just a little bit of you fooling around and kind of leading her on? So she arrives to find out what the situation is and concocts a plan with Romeo. This is a scene that I'm assuming Shakespeare wrote for comedic effect, because Mercutio is absolutely like holding the floor, loads and loads of puns, loads of sexual innuendo, but when we read or watch it now, it feels a little bit problematic, particularly in the way that they speak to the nurse. But we'll get into that in a few moments. Okay, so let's start here. This is in relation to this challenge that Romeo has received, although he doesn't realise it yet, but this letter has arrived to Montague's house challenging him from Tybalt. And Mercutio says in relation to this, well, alas, poor Romeo, he is already stabbed. He's already dead, sorry, stabbed with a white wench's black eye, shot through the ear with a love song, the very pin of his heart cleft with the blind bow boy's butt shaft. And is he a man to counter Tybalt? I'm so sorry for sniggering, such a child. But the metaphor that he's been using here, this idea that Romeo is already dead, that Romeo has been stabbed, is suggesting that love, his love for Rosaline, has made him weak. So he's talking about Cupid. So when it talks about the blind bow boy's butt shaft, what it actually means is Cupid's arrow. So he's basically saying Romeo has been shot by Cupid and it's made him weak. And then he asks this rhetorical question. It's quite scornful. And is he a man to encounter Tybalt? Like he's meant to be fighting Tybalt, this lovesick loser that's kind of lost his way. So yeah, very, very mocking. Benvolio is like, well, why? What's the deal with Tybalt? Which gives Mercutio another kind of opportunity for a bit of wordplay. So he says, more than Prince of Cats, I can tell you. Oh, he is the courageous captain of compliments. Really lovely plosive alliteration there, drawing attention to these words. But it's obviously metaphorical as well. He says, he fights as you sing prick songs, keeps time, distance and proportion. Rest me his minim rest, 1, 2, and the third in your bosom, the very butcher of a silk button. So we've got this sort of quite metaphorical description of his fighting. So he says that he fights to time, like it's music. So that's where we've got keeping time, rest me his minim, as in a beat. In music, and then 1, 2, and the third in your bosom. So the idea is it's like he's dancing to a song, but then straight into your heart, which is why he's the very butcher of a silk button, because obviously it's going in here. And then he describes here using fencing terms. So the immortal passado, the punto reverso, the height, all fencing terms describing his prowess. Now, he is mocking Tybalt here. He is making fun of him, but at the same time, there is this sense of danger that someone who is actually very skilled in fighting wants to fight Romeo, who in their eyes is nothing but a lovesick puppy that's kind of lost like his sense of self. I've titled this the lols. It's awkward, this scene, because Mercutio and Romeo are sort of having a little battle of wits, a little skirmish of wits in this moment, and it kind of cements their friendship, and it sort of cements that they've got the same sort of humour. It's quite sexualized, where, you know, Romeo refers to his pump being well flowered, and, you know, Mercutio says, well, you know, follow me this jest till now thou hast worn out thy pump, that when the single soul of it's worn, the jest may remain after the wear and soul singular. So they're playing around with each other's language, both talking about shoes, but also talking about sex. And this little bit at the end, you know, Mercutio calls on Benvolio, come between us, good Benvolio, my wits faint, as in like, oh, I can't cope with this lolling backwards and forwards. But note the kind of metaphor that almost makes it seem like it's a fight. And so Romeo says, switch and spurs, or I'll cry a match. So it's like a horse riding metaphor here. Okay, so kind of like, come on, giddy up with this back and forth. So, you know, they're having a joke. It's kind of at each other's, to each other's detriment here. No one is being hurt, but yeah, each other. But it suggests this kind of jokiness and sexualized jokiness that only is developed further. So it's this moment that I just want to draw your attention to how this joking develops in relation to how women are treated in this play, in particular the nurse. The nurse is obviously of lower status, and she arrives on scene. Now Shakespeare gives us a clue that perhaps she looks a bit mental, because when Romeo sees her, he cries a sail, that suggests that, you know, she's wearing something quite big, or she is quite big and broad. But so she's seen by them as a kind of comical figure. But actually, the way that Mercutio speaks to her is quite shocking. So if you have a little look at what we've got on the slide here. So Romeo says, well, what hast thou found? Mercutio says, no hare, sir, unless a hare, sir, in a Lenten pie, that is something stale and hoar ere it be spent. Okay, so on one surface, he's referring to her as, he's basically saying, well, she's not a hare, as in, you know, like a bunny rabbit. But if she was a hare, she would be like a mouldy, stale bit of hair that you would just chuck in a pie before it's ready. So that's mean, you know, it's horrible. It's not very nice. But would you believe it, that actually a hare has got another word. It's a homonym, also means prostitute. So he looks at the nurse and he goes, well, she's not a prostitute, unless she's one of those like old stale prostitutes that's kind of been used up already. Like, what a thing to say! I mean, it's just horrendous. You know, fun metaphor, but also verbally abusive to this woman who has just walked along just to try and find Romeo. And then to make matters worse, he then sings a little song about this hare stroke prostitute, just, you know, really like re-emphasizing the content. An old hare whore and an old hare whore is very good meat in Lent, so the only time that you would eat a kind of hare pie that is old and mouldy is in Lent, when you're not, with us, you know, you're fasting. But a hare that is whore is too much for a score when it whores ere it be spent. So again, he's basically saying, what a waste if your meat pie goes mouldy before you can eat it. But obviously, if hare is a prostitute, he's saying what a waste if a prostitute is kind of past it by the time you've enjoyed her. So we've got this kind of behaviour towards women that is so polarised, depending on who the woman is. So Juliet by characters in the Capulet sort of zone, Paris and Romeo, is sort of worshipped and idolized and is a saint that pilgrims go to touch, to bless their hands. And women of lower status are prostitutes and subjects of ridicule. And you know, it's really, really difficult to watch this now. And you know, Romeo doesn't come off amazingly well either here, because he's kind of joining in the fun before the subject kind of gets more serious. But you know, he does go off to speak to her. Mercutio just gets one final dig in, farewell ancient lady, farewell, before poor nurse starts to talk to Romeo. So there's this moment, and so she berates and she's like, who on earth was that? And Romeo's like, oh, it's Mercutio, he doesn't, you know, he's just having a joke. And she gets quite annoyed because the chap she's with, Peter, who's like her escort, she's annoyed that he didn't step in to say anything, which is fair, but also, does Peter want to start a fight with these guys? Possibly not. And then the subject sort of shifts. So she says, now, afore God, I'm so vexed that every part about me quivers. Yeah, she's trembling all over. She's just been so horribly verbally abused by these young men. Scurvy knave, pray you, sir, a word. And as I told you, my young lady, so no, this is now to Romeo, my young lady bade me inquire you out. What she bade me say, I will keep to myself. But first, let me tell ye, if ye should lead her into a fool's paradise, as they say, it were a very gross kind of behaviour, as they say. For the gentlewoman is young, and therefore if you should deal double with her, truly it were an ill thing to be offered to any gentlewoman, and very weak dealing. Those are stern words for Romeo, and she is right to do it. Okay, so this metaphor of fool's paradise, she's basically saying, are you leading her on? Because if you are leading on a young woman like Juliet, if you are just trying to have sex with her outside of wedlock, that is an absolutely disgusting thing. So even though the nurse is a kind of bawdy character, she has strict moral scruples in relation to this. And this is a sign of how protective she is of Juliet. And quite rightly, because you know, she's there on behalf of Juliet, and the first thing that she sees is that he's friends with these horribly verbally abusive people that have just called her a prostitute for no reason at all. Okay, you may have noticed that all the way through this scene, Shakespeare is writing in prose. That is the kind of form where you're not writing in any verse, so nothing poetic, no meter, no rhythm, no rhyme. It's just like paragraphs, you know, just as if you were to write down exactly what I was saying now, you'd write it in paragraphs. That is prose. Until this moment when we get back into verse, specifically blank verse, iambic pentameter, okay, which is the unrhyming iambic pentameter. And it's because of this content. Bid her devise some means to come to shrift this afternoon, and there she shall at Friar Lawrence's cell be shrived and married. So because we've moved away from all of the nonsense and the laughing and the joking and the sexual innuendo, and we've moved to marriage, to the holy act of matrimony and the pure love of Romeo and Juliet, we have reverted back to verse. Shrift, by the way, this word here means confession, because obviously they're Catholic faith. And be shrived means she'll be given the chance to confess, to get absolution, to make sure that she is sin-free before getting married. And then Romeo contrives the next part of the plan, because it's not just the act of the marriage that needs to be sorted, it's the consummation of that marriage as well, i.e. their wedding night. So he says, stay, good nurse, behind the abbey wall. Within this hour my man shall be with thee, and bring thee cords made like a tackled stair, which to the high top gallant of my joy must be my convoy in the secret night. So he's basically saying, hang about an hour, meet my man, and he will give you something that I can use as a ladder so that I can climb up. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, but we've gone straight back into the kind of bawdy sex stuff. But because it's after marriage, they're talking about after the wedding. Then it's actually the kind of the union, the consummation of the marriage, which was so important because obviously reproduction, you know, that's what the aim of the game is once you're married. And so that's why we go back into verse. There is a little slip back into prose where the nurse is speaking, and I just wanted to draw your attention to this because there has to be like a little sign or a little hint of the conflict to come. So in this conversation, she slips in, "Oh, there is a nobleman in town, one Paris, that would fain lay knife aboard." So it's a reminder that Juliet has another suitor, that Paris wants to marry her. There's this really cool little metaphor, would fain lay knife aboard. That means stake claim to her, because in those days you'd bring your own cutlery to the dining table as a guest, and you would put your knife down where you wanted to sit. So the metaphor is laying claim to her. And the nurse tells Romeo that actually sometimes she tells Juliet that she should marry Paris because he's the better in terms of prospect. But we're reminded of Juliet's choice and Juliet's will here. She's like, nah, you know, he's like a toad in comparison. I'd rather see a toad than Paris, and looks really pale and kind of horrified when the nurse mentions it. So we know that Juliet is truly focused on Romeo, but we needed to be reminded of that growing conflict. Last points from me. Key themes, we've got age versus youth one more time here, but in this case there's a disrespect between the youth, or the youth towards the age. We've got gender, focusing on the mistreatment of women of lower status and lower class, and this sort of fits in a way with masculinity and masculine honours. We've got the mistreatment of females, but we've also got the kind of the need to present yourself in this way by characters like Mercutio. And there's a sense that there's a growing frustration with Romeo. In some way he's been emasculated by his love for Rosaline, which is why he's doubting whether or not Romeo could fight Tybalt in the challenge. So there's this real sense again of what it is to be a man in this period, or certainly what Mercutio thinks it is to be a man. Obviously we've got the theme of love because this is all about planning the marriage between Romeo and Juliet. And as always, conflict, not just because we're reminded about Paris, but because we're also reminded of the challenge and the growing, building rage of Tybalt that is sort of just going along in the background, ready to explode shortly. Right, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Any questions, any comments, you just pop them along in the comments box and I will get back to you. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and then you can see when the next few videos are coming up, as well as all of the other videos that should help you with different aspects of your GCSE English language and literature. Okay, thank you for watching. Happy revising.